Hi, good day all, and welcome. So, just making this very quick video to cover what we would have normally done in week one, specifically around chapter one and chapter two. So, let's jump straight into it. So, I'm gonna leave this for you to read the land acknowledgements, uh, as well as you can have a look at me on LinkedIn and ask me any questions in class. I'm a bit boring, but yeah, I'll leave that to you. Uh, Key thing that I normally ask in class is this question. Yeah, I want y'all to write this down. So the answer will be a yes, a no, or a maybe, or not sure. And essentially what I'm asking is, would you believe me if I told you that you practice different operations management principles and techniques in your personal lives? Yeah, you tell me yes or no. My part of my goal for this term is to help you relate operations management principles, techniques, not just to the real world in terms of industry, but also to your personal lives. Like I said, I'm here to help you or show you how to put all the puzzle pieces together and how to make sense of everything. So, again, you write down on a piece of paper your years of experience, the sort of type of roles and industries that you've worked in. It just gives me a nice feel for what type of students I have in the class, so I can make sure I use appropriate examples. Okay. In terms of guidelines, you can read these, but really the key one for me is please ensure you are consistent in the work that's laid out for you, that you are reading before, during, and after the class, and you're completing all activities. What this does is it prepares you for assignments, exams, etc. Next big one is AI and plagiarism. Plagiarism is really all about, giving credit if you are using work from other people, references, APA format, that type of thing. AI, there's these various tools, whether it's Copilot, ChatGPT, etc. I am not telling you to use it or not to use it. I am merely pointing out AI is a tool. When assignments are submitted, and if the AI score is high, uh, students obviously get penalized for this, so you need to use the tool in a responsible manner. So the onus is on you to understand how to use that tool properly. Some guidelines, just further guidelines that I give to ensure success for this course, which talks about consistency, is really, start listing out all the key words that's either mentioned in class or you're seeing it on slides, etc., and write down a short explanation in your own words so that you understand it. Complete a mind map to ensure you understand everything on it. And we'll be discussing mind maps and completing mind maps within the class. You'll obviously have to refine it. But doing that gives you a very good picture of the entire class, the entire subject, but also how the different pieces all fit together. Okay. So in essence, before class, ensure you are doing all the preparation questions, you are reading, you are coming to class prepared to enable you to take part during the class in terms of discussions and questions. After class, make sure you are completing all your OGL activities. The other video I shared shows you what sits in Brightspace and what sits in Connect. So make sure you're on top of all of that. And then work together within your groups, within your class groups, to have these discussions. Pause the video here, write down 3 manufacturing organizations and 3 service organizations that instantly come to mind. Could be anything. And then I want you to answer this question is, which of the above organizations that you have listed have supply chains? You tell me which does, which doesn't, and why you believe that. Okay. Next, we come to high-level business context. So I always ask students, what's the purpose of a business? A lot of them say to make profit, to make sales, and you'd all be right. But there's more than just that. There's different KPIs that one measures in a business. It could be people-related, profitability, growth, SHEQ, which is safety, health, environment, and quality, maybe things like market share, customer service, and the list goes on. Okay? And that's the context of business. So how do supply chains fit into business? And this comes down to, if you think about a business structure, you've got, for example, the CEO sitting there. What departments are underneath this? Supply chain is one, finance is the other, marketing and sales is the other. So understanding that business context and the various KPIs is important. Then we come to supply chain. And my question to you is, what are the supply chain KPIs that you would measure? And here's a list of them. You can see there's some similarities because obviously what's important for the business has to be important for the different departments. So again, things like people, service, cost, complexity, inventory management, lead time reduction, you got efficiency and effectiveness, in other words, improving it. But before we even come here, I often ask students, so what is a supply chain? What's your understanding? Now, if you take the word chain, it implies a series of links that's interconnected like that. But then what's a supply chain? The supply chain is a series of activities to take all your inbound resources, materials, all the way through to your customer. So you take your materials, you make something with it, some product or service, and you give it to your customer. Now, in the SCORE model, it talks about 5 different aspects. The first one is sourcing, which is getting all these inbound materials. The next one is about making, which is transforming all those materials into some product. Okay. After that, we've got deliver, which is really about warehouse and distribution. So in other words, how do I store these different products, whether it's materials, whether it's finished goods, how do I distribute it? How do I move it around, in other words? And then you've got reverse logistics, which is once you get it to the customer, we know customers return it for whatever the reasons are, quality, pick the wrong item, etc. And reverse logistics is the flow. So you got a flow forward and you got a flow returning. And then the last and probably most important one is plan, which sits in the middle. Because if you don't plan anything, you're not going to be successful. So that's essentially the definition of a supply chain. Just to sum it up, it's all activities that goes into sourcing your products, making it into a product or a good or a service, and then warehousing and delivering it through to your customer or consumer. And obviously then there's reverse logistics, just in case you need to bring things back or send things back. And planning is all aspects of planning that has to do with all these different areas. So if you just look at our definition of supply chain, everything from your supplier through to making it, through to sending it to your customer or retailer. Like I said, reverse logistics is bringing it back. So that's broken up into plan, source, make, deliver, reverse logistics or returns. Deliver is broken up into warehousing and distribution. So how does operations management fits into this? So operations management is about converting these inputs into the output that you want. So convert the inputs into the outputs or the finished goods that you want. In the previous slide, we spoke about efficiency and we spoke about my scratches here and my bad writing, and we spoke about effectiveness. So I want you to pause the video, write down what do you understand by the word effective and what do you understand by the word efficient. Okay. So to give you an example, effective is, did I get the job done? So you running a race, did I finish the race? Was I effective? Yes, I finished the race, therefore I was effective. I achieved the objective or the target or the output. So what is efficiency? Efficiency is, well, how well did you use your resources to achieve your objective? So what are my resources to run a race? It's my health, it's how much of water I drink, it's the shoes I wear, etc. Did I use all of that efficiently, the time I had efficiently to do that? Let's assume you stop for a break, a 30-minute break, lunch break during your race. You did not use your time efficiently. Okay, so efficiency is how well you use your resources. So the intent of operations management is converting the inputs into the outputs in an efficient and effective manner. And if you do that, you are improving productivity. If you are improving productivity, then it means you are better than your competitor, which means you can deliver the same product at a better price or a better quality, better service, etc. Yeah? So operations management is about converting those inputs into that output in an efficient and effective manner. Okay? And that goes into planning and control of all the processes that transforms the input into the output. Some examples of input: people, money, materials, etc. Examples of outputs would be the finished goods or services: coffee, Coke, a car, whatever the case might be. So now we come to an interesting question. We spoke about business. We spoke about supply chain. We said this is how operations management fits into it. And now we're coming to value chain. So what exactly is a value chain? Pause the video, write down in a few words what you think is a value chain. So before I come to explaining what a value chain is, we know that the definition of the word chain is things that are interlinked, like we spoke about when we defined the supply chain. So define value. What is value? So let's take an example. Here we've got a cup of coffee. You paid $5. You bought this cup of coffee from me for $5. And I'm asking you, is it worth it? Did you get good value for it? And you tell me, yes, you did. You believe it's worth it. So my next question to you is going to be, well, what makes it good value? And you tell me, well, the price was right, the quality was good, I like the taste, so you believe you got good value for money. So if you believe, and I'm going to use this as an example only, that one of the things for value was taste, and therefore the $5 that you spent was good value for money, then your idea of value is taste. Someone else could be temperature. Someone else could be the look of the type of container it came in. So everybody has a different perception of what good value means. What a business's job is or function is to figure out what customers or consumers want, what they consider to be good value, and how much they are willing to pay for that good value. Okay? The purpose of supply chain and operations is to convert those inputs into that output to deliver that good value. So then what's a value chain? Well, if a supply chain is all the activities that goes into it, the value chain are only those activities that are directly linked to what the customer or consumer is willing to pay for. Okay? So let's come here, for example. A supply chain, we said, is made up of a value chain, which is those activities that's adding value. So if I take the taste example, what activities contribute to taste? Where if I make a mistake, I don't get the right taste, and therefore I don't add value to the customer or consumer. Now you have to manage that very, very carefully. Then you've got necessary non-value add activities. So what do I mean? For example, transport. When you bought your coffee, the empty cup had to be transported to the store. That transport, is it adding value to taste? No, it's not. So it's not adding value, but it's necessary because you need the container. Okay? Then you've got unnecessary non-value add activities. So as an example, when in the store I got a person working for me, but they're not very good. So for every 10 cups of coffee they make, 1 cup they get the taste wrong because they did not add the right amount of sugar or milk or coffee, and therefore they have to throw it away, which means it's waste. So it's non-value add because it's driving up my input costs, but it's unnecessary. So your job in operations and supply chain is to eliminate this and optimize this. Okay? Now, the different elements of operations management is all of these topics that we'll be discussing in the coming weeks, and these topics really helps you to convert that input into the outputs that you want. Okay. So if we come to my mapping slide for chapter 1, what have we discussed? We spoke about what operations management is, which is really around how do I convert inputs into outputs in an efficient and effective manner, following the supply chain hierarchy of plan, source, make, deliver, and reverse logistics. We spoke about efficiency and effectiveness. Effectiveness is, did I get the job done? Efficiency is, how did I go about getting the job done in terms of using my resources? Operations management is about doing that conversion and involves planning and control. The typical functions we spoke about: finance, operations of supply chain and marketing, but there's a whole bunch of other functions within organizations: HR, IT, innovations, R&D, etc. Current trends. What are the current trends that we are seeing at the moment in our world that drives how we manage our operations, how we make products? Now there's different trends. There's AI usage, there's the global economic challenges, there's wars, there's pandemics, there's scarce resources. So these are all the current trends that's happening. And you have to consider these current trends when setting up your supply chains and managing them. Then you've got model building. So first question is, what is a model? Before we answer the question of why build a model, what is a model? Now, a model is basically a representation of the real world. And why do we want a representation of the real world? Because we don't want to build something and then see whether it works or doesn't work. Building a model is a virtual representation. It's far cheaper. We can test the model and then decide what's the right course of action that we want to take. And by the way, you all build models. I want you in the next class to tell me if any of you have built a model and what do you mean by that. Okay? Then we come to chapter 2, which talks about, we spoke about competitiveness. What is competitiveness and how do organizations compete? They can compete on price, on quality. What's the value they are giving? Okay? How is operations management and this course important in this context? Well, very simply. We said that the purpose of operations was to convert inputs into outputs in an efficient and effective manner. If I do that, my productivity improves, which means I'm more competitive. I'm better than my competitors. Okay. Then we come to strategic planning. So what is strategic planning? So when you draw this pillar out, you got 3 levels of the pillar: strategy, excuse my writing, tactics, and operations. So strategy in most organizations is typically, when you look at your strategic plan, you are planning for the future, 3 to 5 years. Okay. Obviously, different industries, this will vary. If you're building power plants, for example, you can't only plan 3 to 5 years out, because the lead time to build a power plant is probably over 10 years. So that's your strategy. What is tactics? So as an example, one of our KPIs for strategy is, I want to build or improve my revenue from 10 million to 40 million by 2030. That's what I want to do. So what is tactics? Tactics is now taking this strategic roadmap and breaking it up into 6 to 12-month buckets and saying, these are the projects or initiatives that I have to achieve, and if I achieve my tactical plan, I'll achieve my strategy. And operations is, what do I do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, which drives performance and measuring how I convert these inputs into these outputs. So the strategic planning process at a high level talks about the mission, the vision, and the values of the company. It's about setting strategic goals and objectives, which then leads to your strategy or your roadmap for this 3 to 5 year period. Tactics, you're now breaking up into what are the tactics or initiatives or projects that I must do that will help me deliver, and then the action plans to actually deliver and implement it. So last but not least, we talk about demand forecasting. Now this is actually a week 2 topic, but I introduce it here simply because it fits in all together. So whatever I tried to do for this week is, first, I started off with what's the purpose of a business, what are the KPIs, um, how do they compete, those types of elements. I then spoke about supply chain and value chain and the same things, the KPIs, etc. What are the departments that get involved? What's the sort of strategic planning process that gets involved? Under supply chain, we've explained the SCORE model. So why is demand forecasting so important? So you'll remember in the SCORE model, we spoke about planning. Okay, we said there's planning, there's sourcing, there's make, deliver, reverse logistics, and we've got warehousing and distribution. Now, I'm just going to change the color here. Demand forecasting is planning, one aspect of planning. So here's your demand forecast. Now, why is this important? Because if I know what I intend on selling, I can calculate or plan how much I should make and when I should make it. If I know what I want to make, when I want to make it, etc., I can then figure out how much of materials do I need to source from the farmers, etc., from different suppliers. If I know how much of materials I need to source, I then can calculate how big should my warehouse be. If I know how much of product I want to make, how big should my warehouse be? Okay? And obviously there's different aspects of planning. There's materials planning, distribution planning, etc. So demand forecasting feeds, you can see it's a starting point that feeds into just about every part of the business. In fact, we spoke about the different departments. Let's take an example of finance. If finance knows what's the plan of what to make, when to make it, including what machines do I need to buy to make it, they can put a budget together. If they know how much of materials to buy, they can put a budget to keep money aside to buy materials, for example. If you are in HR and you need to develop a strategy, if you know what the make plan is, which started from the forecast, then you know that I'll manufacture like this, but in peak periods I'm going to manufacture like that and then come down. HR needs to figure out how do they get resources to do that. So this is how forecasting fits into different elements. Just by the way, what I want you to see as well is, can you see how this is the start of your mind map that starts showing the interrelationships of the different, within the business, the different departments, but also the different topics, and how one feeds into the other. So that wraps up chapter 1 and 2, an introduction, but also I dived quite a bit into overall supply chain management. You'll see in week 2, I'll be putting up some of the same diagrams. If you got any questions, please reach out to me. Also, if you got any feedback for me on how I can make these types of videos better, by all means, please do that as well. So thank you very much. Yeah, hope this was useful for you.